UFC fans love brutal knockouts, reckless striking exchanges, and the kind of raw violence that made MMA the most dangerous sport in the world. For decades, the fights we remembered were wars.
One more flurry. Oh, wow!
Blood spilled, bombs thrown,
Everything but the kitchen sink and boom! Trujillo!
and someone left unconscious on the canvas. But at UFC 319, when Khamzat Chimaev dismantled champion Dricus Du Plessis in one of the most dominant performances ever, the crowd didn't cheer, they booed. Social media exploded with complaints.
I'm coming for everybody! Kill everybody!
Even fighters called it boring. So how does total domination become total disappointment? The fight was over before it truly began. Khamzat Chimaev opened with a double-leg takedown in under 10 seconds, immediately establishing the pattern that would define the next 25 minutes. Across 5 brutal rounds, Chimaev executed 12 takedowns out of 17 attempts, controlling Du Plessis on the ground for a staggering 21 minutes and 40 seconds. A middleweight record that left the champion with virtually no opportunity to fight back. The striking numbers told an even more devastating story. Chimaev landed 529 strikes compared to Du Plessis' measly 45, with the champion managing just 1 significant strike through the first 4 rounds. Chimaev dominated through his signature crucifix position, controlling Du Plessis' arms while raining down strikes. Yet despite this overwhelming control, he never came close to finishing the fight. On paper, it was one of the most dominant championship performances in UFC history, a technical masterpiece that showcased Chimaev's suffocating wrestling and relentless cardio. The UFC built its empire on a simple promise: organized violence with unscripted drama. Fans don't tune in for technical seminars. They crave the moments that make them jump off their couches and scream at their televisions. They want knockouts that come from nowhere, like Jorge Masvidal's flying knee that separated Ben Askren from consciousness in 5 seconds, or submissions that force elite fighters to desperately tap before going to sleep. The beauty of mixed martial arts lies in its unpredictability, where momentum can shift with a single strike, and underdogs can become legends with one perfectly timed counter. Fans live for the back-and-forth wars where both fighters refuse to break, trading bombs until someone's chin finally gives out or their will crumbles under pressure. These are the moments that create viral highlights, sell pay-per-views, and turn fighters into household names. The sport's most beloved champions, from Chuck Liddell's devastating power to Anderson Silva's Matrix-like striking, earned their legendary status not just by winning, but by finishing fights in spectacular fashion. When fans invest their money and emotions into a fight, they're buying a ticket to witness potential violence and the raw human drama that comes with it. They want to see fighters take risks, push for finishes, and create those unforgettable moments that will be replayed for years to come. This fight stripped away everything that makes UFC compelling and left fans with a technical exercise in positional control. Chimaev didn't just dominate Du Plessis, he completely eliminated him as a participant in his own title fight. After 4 rounds, the reigning middleweight champion had landed just 1 significant strike, a statistic so shocking it bordered on the surreal. There was no back-and-forth drama, no momentum swings, no moments where Du Plessis threatened to turn the tide or catch Chimaev with a desperate counter. Every round followed the same predictable script: takedown, control, light ground strikes, repeat. The fight became a 25-minute demonstration of one man's wrestling superiority over another, but demonstrations don't create the emotional investment that fans crave. Du Plessis, who had built his reputation on heart and finishing ability, was reduced to simply surviving rather than competing. What made it particularly frustrating for viewers was watching a dominant performance that never felt like it was building toward anything. No submission attempts that had fans on the edge of their seats, no ground and pound that threatened to end the fight, just methodical control that served as a masterclass in how to win rounds without creating excitement. Wrestling dominance creates a fundamental problem for the UFC. What wins fights isn't always what sells them. Chimaev's performance was a technical masterpiece that showcased elite-level grappling, cardio, and fight IQ. But wrestling control is inherently the least visually exciting style for casual audiences. Unlike striking, where every exchange carries the potential for instant drama, wrestling unfolds slowly through positional battles, incremental advantages, and cumulative damage that builds over time rather than exploding in highlight reel moments. The visual language of wrestling dominance, heavy top pressure, methodical ground strikes, and positional control simply doesn't translate to the same emotional peaks and valleys that make fans lose their minds. Social media erupted with this exact frustration, with fans posting reactions like, "From a technical perspective, amazing. From an entertainment perspective, this fucking sucks," and calling Chimaev the absolute most boring, overrated fighter to ever watch. Even fellow fighters couldn't hide their disappointment, with established names like Paulo Costa and Nate Diaz echoing the crowd's sentiment that the fight was tedious to watch. This disconnect reveals the UFC's core dilemma. The most effective fighting styles often produce the least entertaining spectacles, leaving promoters to balance sporting legitimacy with the entertainment value that drives their business model and keeps fans coming back for more. The booing that erupted at the United Center wasn't disrespect toward Chimaev's skill. It was the sound of 20,000 people feeling cheated out of the experience they'd paid to witness. UFC crowds don't just buy tickets to see who wins. They invest in the promise of violence, drama, and the possibility that they'll witness something legendary unfold before their eyes. The promotion builds every fight with hype videos, trash talk, and the implicit guarantee that when two elite fighters step into that octagon, anything can happen. But when a dominant fighter methodically controls an opponent for 25 minutes without ever threatening to finish the fight, audiences feel robbed of the payoff they were promised. This psychological contract between the UFC and its fans explains why crowds can appreciate technical excellence while still booing it. They came for a fight, not a grappling seminar. The frustration becomes even more intense when fans watch a fighter as dominant as Chimaev choose safety over spectacle, leading to comments like, "If you wrestle a guy for 25 minutes and can't submit him, you should lose." It's not about logic or fairness. The UFC operates as both a legitimate sport and an entertainment empire. And when those two elements conflict, the business suffers in ways that extend far beyond one boring fight. Pure dominance without excitement doesn't just disappoint fans in the moment. It damages the long-term marketability of champions and the promotion itself. Hardcore fans may admire the grappling chess match, but casual fans, the ones who fuel the UFC's pay-per-view machine, tune in for blood, chaos, and highlight reel endings. Dana White's obsession with finishers isn't just about entertainment, it's about survival. If wrestling-heavy champions like Chimaev consistently deliver suffocating but uneventful performances, they risk turning away the very audience that made MMA explode into the mainstream. That's the real danger. If the sport's most effective techniques consistently produce its least entertaining fights, the UFC faces an existential question. Does it prioritize pure competition or protect the spectacle that keeps millions emotionally invested? This isn't the first time the UFC has faced this problem. History is filled with fighters who dominated but couldn't keep fans entertained. Georges St-Pierre, one of the greatest of all time, was accused of playing it safe after the Serra loss and faced boos even while defending his belt. Tyron Woodley's reign collapsed under criticism of uneventful title fights, with Dana White openly blasting him for not pulling the trigger. Demetrius Johnson was so technically perfect that fans stopped caring, forcing the UFC to trade him away despite his brilliance. Every time a boring champion emerges, the UFC scrambles to fix it, whether by aggressive matchmaking, hyping up dangerous challengers, or simply sidelining them in favor of more marketable stars. The truth is brutal. In the UFC, it's not enough to win. You have to win in a way that sells. That's the storm Khamzat Chimaev now walks into. If fans decide his style is boring, history says the UFC won't protect him. They'll move on to someone who delivers chaos, even if they're not as technically dominant. The boos in Chicago weren't just aimed at one performance. They were a warning shot about what happens when the sport evolves away from what first captivated the world. Khamzat Chimaev's performance at UFC 319 will go down as one of the most dominant title victories in middleweight history, but it also perfectly encapsulated the sport's growing identity crisis. He proved that technical mastery can completely neutralize even elite champions. Yet the boos and backlash reminded everyone that dominance without drama leaves fans feeling empty. The UFC now has a new champion who can beat anyone, but might struggle to excite everyone. A paradox that highlights the eternal tension between what wins fights and what wins hearts. Chimaev earned his belt through flawless execution, but whether he can capture the imagination of fight fans remains the biggest question mark hanging over his reign. What do you think? Should fighters prioritize entertainment over pure effectiveness, or is it the fans who need to appreciate technical mastery more? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this breakdown of why dominant performances can still disappoint crowds, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the biggest fights in MMA.